Faces dropped on a new edition of Soccer Down here. It's a Friday. It's a freestyle Friday, so we'll be taking your questions, your comments on a lot of different things. You can send us down whatever tangent you want to send us down today. It's one of those kinds of Fridays. We do have U.S. men's national team on the docket. We have qualifiers from the European Championships on the docket. We have qualifiers for the World Cup out of South America on the docket. Lots of things. We have an Atlanta United awards article up at soccerdownhere.net written by our own Jarrett Smith. We can get into that. We can get into anything else on your mind today. John is giddy this morning over a video I haven't seen yet and a return appearance on a show that's been going on for about 20 years on network TV.
17, yeah. It's Grey's Anatomy.
I was close.
Okay, so you were. I will stipulate that I have not seen Grey's Anatomy since basically season 4.
Okay.
So that's 13 years ago when Katherine Heigl's character was fighting brain cancer and her dead husband Denny came back to visit her in her thoughts as she was fighting the disease. And that was pretty much the end of it for me.
Yeah, okay.
So
13 years later?
13 years later, Patrick Dempsey's dead character.
And what is he referred to as?
McDreamy.
Yeah, that was what you called him, and I was kind of like, okay.
Yeah, Patrick. Hey, you had McDreamy and McSteamy. Those were the two doctors, and that was part of the angst in the middle seasons that I had no interest in watching.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah.
So Patrick Dempsey's character dies in an auto accident, and I don't remember how many years ago it was, and now he's off racing at like Long Beach and SCCA and 24 Hours of Daytona and things like that.
Wait a minute, is this in real life?
So,
okay, that's real life.
Yeah, in real life.
Gotcha.
Patrick Dempsey in real life is actually racing cars and doing.
I'm trying to understand, and I'm not in this world, so I'm trying to understand.
Yeah. So anyway, Patrick Dempsey in a dream sequence last night involving the main character is walking on a beach, and it's like a 10-second teaser at the end, and you're like, it was your holy bleep moment that McDreamy came back and he's, Twitter exploded and it broke, and so it was an interesting TV moment in the time of TV production. So dead for a couple of seasons, comes back in a dream sequence, and so Twitter broke last night with the return of McDreamy on Grey's Anatomy.
My Twitter must be really different than yours.
Yeah, well, Twitter, I guess, in the collective sense, broke. Mine did not, but in my updates, for some strange reason, I don't know where Grey's Anatomy pops into my update chain, or maybe it was in my my E online thing, where they sit there and they give you articles that you're supposed to be interested in. And so EW Today or E Online, the return of Patrick Dempsey, and you're like, okay, well, then you click on it, and I got the clickbait, and it's like, he returned last night. Okay, so he was dead, but he's back in a dream sequence, so there you go.
Isn't that like typical soap opera?
Yeah, but it took him however many seasons to get back to this point.
I think that's still typical soap opera. Anyway, yes, and Jason Nix had a big takeaway here that you follow E Online. That's on brand.
I'll have to look at that.
No, you just said you did, John.
Well, no, I said I get their updates. I don't know if I follow E Online though. In the margin of articles that
stop. It's not about the actual follow button. You get their updates, so you're doing something with them. That was all the point was.
Okay.
It's on your AOL homepage, basically, is what we're talking
probably
about. It shows up on your MySpace page.
Yes.
And you probably have the Grey's Anatomy theme playing when you go to your MySpace page, right?
Okay. I don't know. I haven't been to my MySpace page, so if the Grey's Anatomy theme is there, then that's news to me. I'd have to learn how to remember how to access my passcodes on my MySpace page.
That's a good
second
try.
point.
It's a good effort. The second, there's more. Okay, second point. What's the second point?
Well, for those of you that might be watching the golf tournament in Augusta,
it has a name. It's called the Masters. Everybody's talking about it.
I don't want us to get in trouble.
How do we get in trouble for talking about their tournament? We're not broadcasting it.
Well, I don't know. They're very, very particular about these kinds of things. So, okay, anyway, there's a golf tournament going on in Augusta. And a sports talk show host in Memphis, Chris Vernon, who has been known for parody tunes and other bits, did a Masters update to the riff of Headbuster.
Of what?
Headbuster? Was it Headbuster?
Which one?
You're gonna have. It's the one that everybody knows.
No, you called it two different things.
Headbuster.
Okay, that one.
Headbuster. That.
Sure,
I don't know the actual name. I don't know the name of the song, but that's just the riff. The riff he uses is from that, and it is 6 minutes of radio gold. He's posted two different versions. One's about 1:40. One is the full 6.5 minute version. It has mascots behind him. It is an explosion of rap and ad lib and genius, and it's a Masters update, and it's complete with sunglasses, a green jacket, a tiger tattoo, and it is absolutely amazing radio. So that is your listen for the day after the show is over. Scott Van Pelt actually admitted on Twitter that if he played this in the Butler cabin, that the world might collapse upon itself.
That's very possible. I think you could play about 3,450,000 different songs in the Butler cabin, and the world would collapse on itself because it's kind of old school a little bit there. Just a little bit.
Yeah.
And yes, Gareth Bale was watching the Masters during the Wales-United States match. That is an absolute positive thing. That was definitely going on. I'm sure he might have been checking out some of the juice boxes about the Masters as well. Maybe trying to pick up
He was doing quite well because Paul Casey, first round leader, was at plus 3,300 in your juice boxes yesterday.
Joe Boss, none of us know what John's referring to. We're all just smiling and nodding right now and letting him have his time. It's good times. We're all like, okay, head buster.
Yeah, you're like, whatever. Just let John sit there and try to think of the rap tunes that he can't think of the titles of, and then and the artists that are associated.
And boom goes the dynamite.
Pretty much, youngin.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's talk about the United States. Well, actually, no, let's not. Let's hold on to that for a second. Let's no, because there were other things to talk about. I wasn't trying to make a joke. I do think maybe there's some overreactions going on about the USMNT. But Matt Wagner chimed in at the very beginning. I'm surprised at the comments earlier in the week by Brooks about the language barrier being a factor with the performance this year. I can't see that being an issue, and Dom didn't seem to think so either. I want to clarify here because I think this got really twisted based off of a couple of tweets, and I think you needed to take the full comments in to understand it. Felipe Cardenas was speaking. It was yesterday that Brooks Lennon was speaking to the media. And Felipe had two different tweets. And I think depending on if you saw both, you might have been confused by the situation. First tweet was, according to Brooks Lennon, a, quote, language barrier was one of the reasons why Atlanta United players were unable to take training day tactics to and execute them on the pitch. The full quote about the language barrier was this. This is from Brooks Lennon yesterday. I think one of the toughest reasons for us at Atlanta United is that we have a language barrier. So, sometimes messages don't get all the way through, and I think guys are a little bit hesitant to pull the coaches or whatever it may be off to the side and really understand, what's being asked of them. I think that's part of it. That's Brooks Lennon's opinion. He's talking about the players not understanding the coaches in this situation. He also talked about how the games were tough, no fans, traveling to Orlando, all the different things. It was new to them. It was very difficult. It was frustrating. It made it a hard season. He said, but like I said, you've got to look at yourself in the mirror, understand what you did wrong and what you can improve on. You've just got to accept it as it is. You can't just blame COVID for having such a messed up year. It is a factor, and that's me adding that. But yes, he's saying you got to look at yourself in the mirror. So the language barrier thing, I think there's more to it than just the initial tweet, and that's why Felipe posted the full quote to give the full context here. Jürgen Damm said he didn't think it was as big of a deal. Jürgen Damm's also bilingual. Not every player is. You had Frank de Boer at the beginning of the season who does speak Spanish. He played at Barcelona. He's fluent in Spanish. And you had Stephen Glass, who's not fluent in Spanish, in the second half of the year. So maybe there were some players who didn't understand what Stephen Glass was asking them to do, because I don't think it'd be an issue with Frank. It doesn't seem to be. And as Brooks says, maybe some of the players were hesitant to make sure they understood what the coaches were asking them to do. Brooks is putting that on the players' side here and saying that maybe some needed to have a conversation afterwards to make sure they were fully clear. I don't know. Language barriers are a problem for teams. I mean, it happens. It's not something that you can completely avoid. This is an international game. You're going to have players come in from all over. It is on the player to understand what their role is and what their responsibilities are and what they're being asked to do. That's on the player. I think when you start to see it's an issue, then the coaches have to step in and say, hey, do you understand? Can we figure this out here? But players go from country to country, and they have to adapt to what's happening at that club. I think it's been spun the other way, that it's the club's fault, the coaching staff's fault. It's not, because players move worldwide. When a Spanish-speaking player goes to Germany, they have to get on board with what's going on. Like that's part of it here. So if there were players who didn't understand what was being asked of them and they didn't ask for more detail or go after training and ask a question, if any of that didn't happen, that's a problem. And Brooks is alluding to that potentially being a problem. Jürgen Damm said it wasn't as big a deal. Jürgen Damm didn't have a language issue here either, so don't know. But that was said, and that's the full context of it. I want to make that clear because I think that might have got twisted a little bit if you didn't see the follow-up tweet from Felipe with the full quote from Brooks Lennon.
Right, and that's the context I think that needed to be put in here, is to look at the full quote to get the full context of what Brooks was talking about.
Yeah,
because you see the first one, you see the short version, and you're sitting there and bells and whistles start to go off. But then when you see the longer version, then that adds the context that you're looking for.
Yeah. Let's see. Okay, Matt didn't see the full quote, so okay, cool. That makes sense. All right. So Joe said Scottish plus Spanish, probably a little tough to understand. South Georgia United, Jason Heinley said, couldn't it be a communication barrier, not entirely language? Sometimes two people who speak the same language don't always get each other. Absolutely. That's one of the challenges of a coaching change, because you're listening to one way speak about concepts in specific terms, in specific ways. Then you have somebody else come in and you're changing it. They also changed formation from Frank DeBoer's 3-4-3/3-4-2-1, if you want to get super specific with it, to a 4-3-3. They'd played a 4-3-3, the players who were here last year. It was pretty similar to what Atlanta United looked like in a 4-3-3. It wasn't, I don't think, a complicated concept. It wasn't, what Matias Almeida tries to do. It wasn't what Marcelo Bielsa tries to do. It was pretty simple. There were some variances in it, in that sometimes you had two holding midfielders, sometimes you had one, little things like that. Sometimes maybe the roles were a little different with Ezequiel Barco on the left wing versus John Gallagher. Gallagher might stretch the field wider, whereas Barco is going to look to come inside. Those are little wrinkles that happen just with player changes. So it sounds like maybe there were some issues there. If you want to go communication barrier rather than language barrier, sure, that could absolutely be part of it. People could describe tactics and ideas differently as well, even though they're talking about the same thing. That takes time to build up that understanding. It's hard mid-season. It's hard in this situation where you didn't have a whole lot of time on the training pitch, to be perfectly honest. You had a lot of games where it's weekend Wednesday. You might get one good training session in a week that way.
Yeah.
So when you're trying to build up this understanding, it's very difficult on the fly. That's why preseason is so important. That's why extended periods of training time are very important, because you can build that understanding. You can build that collective. It's hard to do on the fly. So maybe that's part of it, but that's the whole situation there. Okay, any more questions on that? We'll get into it as we go today. I'm sure there'll be some more. I saw that being a very big topic in the Atlanta United Twitter sphere yesterday. Let's get into the U.S. men's national team. Scoreless draw in Cardiff against Wales. This was not a top Welsh team. Obviously, Gareth Bale's watching the Masters on a tablet instead of playing in the match, so that's part of it. Each team had one good chance. Brennan Johnson for Wales in his debut, saved by Zach Steffen. I think it was early in the second half. Uli Yanez had the best chance for the U.S., forced a turnover, or kind of pounced on the turnover, and then turned and ripped a shot that forced a save and a corner. U.S. started two 17-year-olds for the first time since 1991. Yunus Musa and Gio Reyna started. Sebastian Lletget started as kind of a false nine. That was interesting. We'll get into the individuals here in a second. But, I mean, the U.S. played well. I think maybe it's being overblown a little bit how well they played. There's also the expectations of this is the first time most of these guys have played together. So, not being as fluid as you would like is absolutely understandable. Go into the stats real quick. I mean, the U.S. had 7 shots. Wales had 4. Wales sat back pretty deep. U.S. had 61% of the possession. Going deeper in, Wales 157 duels to the U.S. 35. That's a big difference. 12 tackles, 1-6. That's a big difference. U.S. committed 17 fouls to Wales 9. That's a big difference. Wales had more clearances, which you would expect the way the game played out. Corners were 5-3 for the U.S. So, I mean, quality of play, the U.S. passed at 88%. They were the better team. They didn't really threaten a whole lot. They had 1 shot on target. Wales had 2. So there wasn't a ton going on here. It did fizzle out a little bit towards the second half. So let's get into the individuals. Soccer America does their ratings after every U.S. match, and these are subjective. This is not a statistical rating situation. Zach Steffen, they gave a 5. He made 2 saves. He had 1 bad pass to Tyler Adams. That Zach Steffen's distribution is generally a concern. That's another time where it's a bit of a concern. He does do well with distribution at times, as Soccer America points out, and it was Mike Watala who posted this. Picked out Conrad around the midfield line at the 67th minute. Steffen's inconsistent with his distribution. If he's going to play at Manchester City, it has to improve. If he's going to be the top guy for the U.S., he's going to have to improve. It still has some work to do. 5 for him is fine there. Defense, they give Miazga a 3, and Miazga had 1 really bad moment. He committed 4 fouls. He got a yellow card where he had took up a bad position, allowed a player to turn him out on the touchline, get in behind him. He had to commit the foul. Then he complained about it. It was kind of silly. He was the weakest one, according to Watala, with a 3. Brooks got a 6. Robinson got a 4, starting on the left side. Serginho Dest got a 7, starting on the right. Dest attacked a lot. Robinson, so-so. Brooks was really good. I think maybe that's a little harsh on Brooks. I would have given Brooks a 7. Midfielders, Adams, Reyna, McKinney, and Musa were the 4 that they put in this category. McKinney got a 7, Reyna 6, Adams and Musa 5. That's probably about right. McKinney was the best of the group. I'd maybe give Adams a 6. Just bump him up a little bit. They had a lot of the ball. They were given a lot of the ball. Wales didn't really put a whole lot of pressure on them in moments in the middle third, so they could really kind of do what they wanted to here. Musa was solid. I mean, you could tell he was young. He was trying to find his way. He was trying to connect with his teammates. It took him a little bit longer than you would like. He's 17. It's his first game with this group. It's completely understandable. Up top, Lletget is not a 9. He was playing a false 9 role. He played the role well. He didn't give you enough in the box, so you didn't really get any chances with him. He got a 4. Conrad de la Fuente, and they are going by Conrad. Thank you. He wants to be Conrad. Barcelona's calling him Conrad. The U.S. can call him Conrad. He got a 4 as well. He had maybe one of the best opportunities that he put over the bar. That's a problem. Outside of that, he was really not all that dangerous. They were more dangerous down the right side with Dest and Reyna, not as dangerous on the left with Robinson and Conrad. Substitutes, you saw Uli Yanez come in, you saw Johnny come in, and they're going by Johnny. That's what's on the back of his shirt. That's what he's known by in Brazil. That's what we're going to call him too. Tim Weah, Nicholas Giacchini, Owen Odasoe, and Reggie Cannon all substituted in. Odasoe and Cannon were really late. They didn't have much involvement. Giacchini didn't have a ton of involvement, to be perfectly honest. Neither did Weah. I liked Johnny. It was the first time I had really seen him. I like what he brought to the table. He can compete for time in that holding midfield for sure. So I'm a big fan of what Johnny brought to the table. Yanez needs to play more. I like Uli Yanez. He makes things happen. Those two subs I really liked. The rest didn't really have a whole lot going on there. So those were my takeaways. What do you think, John?
Well, my first question is philosophical. For a match where you have a lot of guys together for the first time, there's not a whole lot of time to get there and practice and get your relationship squared away. For Waitala's ratings to have 3s and 4s for a team that was put together on the quick, are those too harsh where you look at a Miazga and you have a moment and then you've got a foul and complaining, and then that adds up to a 3? Is that too harsh in a situation like this?
Why should it not be harsh?
Well, I mean, it's just 3 to me comes across as, wow, you really sucked. To me, I think that as a part of the process when you're giving folks grades, I mean, 3s, 2s, and 1s to me, it's like, okay, you were like a D or a D plus out there. And I don't mind harsh, but was Miazga a D or a D plus out there when you're looking at that one incident that you're focusing on and then complaining afterwards? It's a philosophical question just into the grading aspect first.
No, it's not a philosophical question. You're taking issue with it. Are you? You sound like you are. I'm fine with a 3 there. I think he didn't play well. If a 5 is an average, and he got a 3, he's below average.
Okay.
That's how I thought he played. I mean, it takes it to the flip side. Is I think on some of the conversation about this, everybody was going gaga about it in the first half, and
right.
I mean, it was okay. Like it wasn't. The play wasn't great. The ideas and maybe just the mentality was good. The actual play, you didn't really create much at all in the first half. You had a lot of the ball in the middle third because Wales let you have it.
Yeah.
You had some good passes out of the back because they weren't under pressure. You had players trying to take people on, which was really good to see. You didn't see a whole lot result from it. You just didn't. That's I mean, that's kind of the whole point here. And I'm glad somebody else said it because this is how I felt watching it. Where was it? Because I saw it in the Twitch pitch, and now I've, of course, lost it. It looked like an Atlanta United match at times where you had a lot of the ball. Mm-hmm. You didn't create enough chances with it. That's what it felt like to me. And, yes, part of that's without a number 9. That is an issue, though. An issue at times with Atlanta United. So it's a good starting point, but I don't think it changes anything yet. Like, it's good. And Miazga's got to be better because Brooks, I think, is the guy, and the player next to him is up for grabs. The play where he got the yellow was awful. It's not something an international center back can get caught in doing. You can't.
And with Miazga, we seem to be seeing a lot of this. There are games where Miazga's having. There are a lot of games where Miazga seems to be having bad games internationally, or he's the weakest link back there at the back.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he's the ultimate guy to start next to John Brooks. There was some talk, and of course it was shot down because this was the opportunity yesterday for the anti-MLS crowd to dance and celebrate, and somebody said, well, I'd like Aaron Long in that position more. Blah, 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 blah. Well, I'm not necessarily disagreeing with that statement either. I'd also like to see Miles Robinson get to that point because I think you need somebody who is more athletic playing next to John Brooks as a good partner here. Now, they've got to be able to do the things that position calls for with the U.S. They've got to be able to pass. They've got to be able to win the 1v1s. They've got to be able to split the lines. Those are things that Long and Robinson both need to improve upon. But those are things that I don't think Miazga really brings to the table in spades either. That's why we've seen Tim Ream as a center back under Greg Berhalter. He's looking for a player there, not just a big center back. Miazga, that play was horrendous to me, that he could get caught in that way. And if somebody had more speed, they would have been gone, and Miazga would have then had to make a decision and bring Red into play with a foul potentially.
Right.
4 fouls. Some of that is down to being caught out of position. That's a problem. Miazga was the weakest one in the back, so I don't have a problem with him getting a 3.
Okay, so then to the flip side, were 7s too high on this day, considering that?
Why not? Why?
Well, once again, I'm looking at the fact it was a goalless draw. You had the one chance.
It's not about the goalless draw part of it, though, John. Like if when you're judging the individual players, you're judging the individual players. A good performance doesn't get dragged down because somebody else didn't score goals. Serginho Dest getting a 7 shouldn't be dragged down because Sebastian Lletget was the number 9. It's Serginho Dest's performance. He did everything you needed him to do. Weston McKennie, not always trying to create chances. He did create a little bit. But those are 2 guys who got 7s. Those are the 2 guys who I think deserved 7s because they're not going to be dragged down by the fact other people didn't do other things. That's not fair either.
Okay, because like I said, I was looking at it from the approach of the whole. I wasn't breaking it down into individual players.
That's the whole point. It's individual ratings. Like that's what this is. Okay. Let's see what people are saying on the Twitch pitch. Would have been nice to start a striker of some sort. I agree, Jason Nix. That was very strange. I don't necessarily understand that. J-Dub, we lacked a true number 9 most of the game. Not having a target man in the box for all those death crosses wasn't the best. Yeah, I don't understand the mentality. I get the idea of the false 9 here. I understand what a false 9 is. I understand maybe what you were thinking. I'm not buying it. And I don't know if Gio Reyna ultimately is that guy. I think you're asking him to do something that is not an easy thing to do, and I don't think it works for the national team. Not in this point. And it goes back to a concern I've had about Berhalter, where I feel like he brings club tactics that you can work on in training day in and day out and bring to the field. And he puts those into a national team scenario where you have one good training session before this game. And you're asking Lletget or maybe Gio Reyna down the line to be a false 9. False 9 is not easy to play. It's not easy for a talented player to play, let alone a 17-year-old making his international debut. 17 in 364 days. I mean, he's 18 today. Yeah. But still, very difficult to ask him to do that if you're Gio Reyna. Very difficult to ask Sebastian Lletget to do that. It doesn't. You have to have a lot of strong interplay around it to get the best out of a false 9. I don't think you can create that in this situation. I think you needed to simplify it and play a number 9. You had number 9s. You had Sebastian Soto, and we don't know all the things behind the scenes, so you have to give Berhalter a little bit of benefit of the doubt here. Were players limited in minutes? Could they only play a certain amount of minutes during the 2 games? Were you being careful with everybody? Do you have something else you want to look at in the second game? Things like that. We'll have a better judge of it after the second game against Panama. But you had Soto. You had in this game, and you played Tim Weah, who could have played as a number 9. You had Nicholas Giacchini. You could have started him. Like, those are things that I'm kind of like, you added to the degree of difficulty by going with a false 9, and I don't really understand why. So, anyway, Cassie says Wales was very organized. They were good defensively. They knew exactly what they were going to do. They sat back. They gave away a lot of possession. They tried to hit on the counter. They weren't really trying to do a whole lot. This wasn't their first team, so they were what they were. Good defensively. That was really about all you saw out of them. Burns says, I still don't get Stefan on a possession team, never will. I agree. I don't know if he's just good enough in possession to be that guy. Johannes says, I think we all agree that the U.S. men's national team needs a legit number 9 to complete this team. What kind of a number 9 should we expect the U.S. to produce? I don't expect the next Lewandowski or Suarez to come from here, but can we produce someone on that next tier, thinking a Jimenez, a Mandzukic, etc.? Jimenez, yeah, absolutely. I think you're going to create, in the U.S., just off the top of my head as I think about it, you're going to create a number 9 who has speed, who can get in behind, who has a good combination of size and speed, who can be a target, but can also be played in behind. And I think that's what you're looking for here A lot of times now it's going to be hard in a game like yesterday where Wales sits back so deep. But you want somebody who can turn and run. I really think Daryl Dike can be a guy that you want to take a look at. I think he could be a good complement to some of these players. I think Sebastian Soto can as well. Josh Sargent can as well. It's figuring those out. Jossie's Artist can as well. And those are all different kinds of guys. But you talk about the prototype for a U.S. number 9 that this country can produce. Jossie's Artist might be that guy. You'd like him to be a little more technical, although Zardes gets crushed for that, and it's a stretch at this point. Somebody made a reel of all his bad first touches from 5 years ago, and that's what he is. No, he's a little bit more than that. Jossie's Artist could be that guy. If you can continue to improve on that prototype, I think the U.S. will be just fine. You want basically it's easy to say you want a complete number 9, but you don't want just a poacher. You don't want just a technical player. I think you do need to bring that speed and power into the mix because that's what we're going to produce. Those are the kinds of players that are going to get looks in this country. All right, then let's build on it. Let's take that to the next level, adding in reading the game, adding in the technical ability. And maybe it's a Raul Jimenez is what you can get to. But right now I think it's Jossie's Artist, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. Katie Weaver was the one with the Atlanta correlation here. Felt a bit like at watching an Atlanta match. Strong center back, decent build-up, no end product. Yeah, that's completely accurate. Kefsey thought Dest was good. Jarrett says Stefan calling him inconsistent with his distribution is pretty generous. Still a really good keeper, but he scares the hell out of me.
Yeah.
Yeah, in possession he absolutely does. Brooks' distribution out of the back was great, according to J-Dub. Those long balls to the wings really helped open things up. That was key. That was really good to see. Brooks is a guy that I haven't always been sold on, but his performance yesterday was very, very good. I would have even potentially given him a 7 for that role. Cassidy liked the midfield. Piscine said, I'll be the brave one to say it. Jossie would have gotten to that death square ball in the 6. Yep, he would have. I think Soto would have as well. I think maybe Tim Weah would have, and I don't know Giacchini well enough to tell you. Ragamuffin asked for the ratings. They're coming from Soccer America, Mike Watala. I don't know I'd be curious what you guys think. Are they completely off? Are they completely on? I don't know. Judging from Twitter, everybody was super excited about the game. Yeah. Maybe that fizzled a little bit as the day went on. I didn't have that feeling. I thought it was good. I didn't think it was great because you didn't have really much danger in the final third. And some of that's down to the tactics and the formation.
Yeah, no, I saw a lot of folks who were excited about Musa Adams McKinney. A lot of folks were excited across the board on Twitter about the lineups and the pressure early on, but the finishing in the final third was the issue that a lot of folks had on our timeline during the match. Tafka was fired up. Tafka said, first off, aggressive, fast, free-flowing. Mm-hmm. This is what happens when I haven't had my Mountain Dew yet. Heavy pressure. Not sure I like the legit false 9, but the mentality is awesome. And then he follows it up, and this was off of the Katie Weaver comment, and this is why I wanted to bring this in. Tafka said, when I've spoken of the boring feel Frank de Boer matches had, this USMNT match is the perfect example of what I want to see that FDB seemed to hinder. They're attempting the tougher, lower percentage passes without a fear that it might not work, as opposed to 50 safe passes per final pass effort. It's maybe 10 to 15 safe passes per final pass effort. Even though they haven't scored, I've still been entertained all match.
That's a really weird line to draw. I don't know. I was having flashbacks to Atlanta matches without being dangerous in the final third, and that's not a Frank thing or not a Frank thing. That's just what happens sometimes. Differences, if I'm looking to try to explain it in differences, I think you saw more 1v1 play, which I do like to see, and I don't think happened enough with Frank's teams, and needed to. That's something that he normally has tried to create in his teams, and I don't think you got enough of that at times. So the 1v1, the ability to go 1v1, I liked that. Trying the difficult path, they didn't try that many. They still pass at a really high percentage. So, they were still completing a lot of safe passes. I think whatever the 15 or 50 or what have you, I don't think it's that far off. It's probably more like a 40-30 kind of conversation if we're going to go in that realm. It depends on how you see it. I didn't think it was all that different, but some did. And maybe it's just because we haven't seen the U.S. really play with that mentality for a while. Maybe we just haven't seen the U.S. play, period, in a while. And that helps a little bit. It needs to be better against Panama. I think that's the thing that maybe hasn't been talked about very much is it has to be better than this. This is nice, but this doesn't get me excited. I'm sorry, it doesn't, because you only had one shot on goal. You had 7 shots, period. You didn't really create a ton. And you can't play both sides of it where it is, you have to create chances, shots, chances. That's what's good. Okay, but this was really good. Well, why was this really good? Well, they tried. Well, the teams that you've criticized for playing in that way have tried too. So, you see what I'm saying? It's not that big of a difference. But we'll get into it more. And most importantly, it's got to be better against Panama. I don't want to see the false 9 experiment. I have a bad feeling we're going to see a lot of Gio Reyna as a false 9. And I'm not a fan of that because I think you have plenty of number 9s who can help you. Even with this roster that doesn't have a Jossie Zardes in it, you've got number 9s. Play with a number 9. Simplify things. Just keep it simple. It's a national team. You don't have all day to work on tactics. Keep it simple. Go ahead.
Nathan Pugh, who is having a hashtag reaction Friday. I guess it's an on par. Or maybe it just is a flat out reaction. I don't know. Mm-hmm. I lost a lot of interest in the USMNT recently, but I watched the first half yesterday. I haven't heard of most of the kids, but it looks like there's potential there, built for 2022.
Yeah, and if you're looking at it from that perspective, absolutely. Good potential, a lot of youth. Those things are good, but that's the positive. The play was okay. It was okay. I mean, as a whole on the team, 5.5.
Yeah.
Maybe a 6 if you want to be generous. But one shot on goal, it doesn't get you much more than that. Yeah. It just doesn't. So, and then I don't have shots or I don't have chances created in front of me. I don't have full opta in front of me, but it wasn't that high. So, anyway, we'll see where it goes. Ricky Ricardo with a really good point. The representation in that lineup yesterday was incredible to me. If there was ever a game to show young black players that they can reach the highest levels and play for this country, yesterday was it. That was something I noticed, too, is you had a lot of variety in that roster, and that was very cool to see. And we don't always see that with the USMNT. We don't see that enough with the USWNT either, and that needs to change. Probably less with the women's side, and that really needs to change. It was good to see, and it needs to be something to build on. You don't pick players because of that, but yes, this is something that you should be able to show to any kid in the U.S. system that, hey, if you're good enough, you're going to get an opportunity, period. That's what this is about, and that needs to continue. I like the messaging before the game. I like the jackets. I liked all of that. I think the U.S. Federation did a really good job with everything around it, and the roster was representative. It was good to see.
Yeah, and of course, and that was one of the cool things for me was all the different messaging with all the different players, and I hope that kind of messaging continues. That this isn't just for this particular run. That this is a consistent message, and I want to see more of this. I want to see it be a consistent message put out, not just yesterday, but going forward.
You have to balance it because this needs to be about winning games.
True.
So, I mean, no, I don't want to see every game be a platform in that way. Pick your spots because otherwise the message isn't going to be as strong. Pick your spots. Right. Every game can't be that. This was the first one back. I would believe that the Panama game will have some of this as well. Make your message by the players that are in your roster. Make your message based off of some of the things off the field. Let these players focus on the game at hand and get wins and play well, because that's going to be the critical thing going forward. You're not winning games by messaging. You're winning games by strong play. True. And I don't want to distract these young players with all of that responsibility either. That's a lot to put on them.
Yeah.
J-Dub says, so was the idea with the starting lineup that Conrad and Reyna were supposed to cut inside and be the scoring threats? Yeah, I think so. Reyna especially from the right side because Dest was going to be overlapping a lot. Maybe not as much, or at least it didn't play out as much with Conrad coming inside. It didn't happen enough. It didn't create enough out of it. But yeah, I guess that was the idea. And again, we don't really know exactly what Berhalter's plan was here, but that's what it would appear to be with the false nine setup. It didn't really work out well enough, in my opinion. Kefsey says, talking about your opinion on the ratings, said, didn't give up a goal, so why below 4? For me, it's because Miazga could have given up a goal in that sequence, and it was such a bad play. That sequence for me would get him a 3, period. And if he didn't do anything else to raise it up, then it's a 3. So that's how I felt on it. Could you have given him a 4? Sure. I mean, a 3-4, really, what's the difference? It's below average.
Yeah.
So a 3 there for me is fine. I don't really have a problem with it. Byrne asks me, why wasn't Miles Robinson called in? Form, injury, fit with Brooks, retaliation for Eels' complaints from last year about the injury. Leggett was there from MLS. He was a late addition when Josh Sargent wasn't allowed to travel because of a positive at Werder Bremen, so they pulled back all of their call-ups for safety concerns. I'm guessing some of it's down to the timing burn. I'm not going to go full black helicopter on it because you didn't know that Atlanta wouldn't be involved until Sunday at, whatever time, 6 o'clock. And people were, I think, already arriving at that point. So they'd already done the roster by that point. They didn't want to take anybody who could be in the playoffs. The Leggett one, LA was already eliminated before decision day, so that made it a little bit easier for him to be that replacement. I'm going to put it down to timing. I don't think it's retaliation because that would be incredibly silly if the Federation and Berhalter want to go down that road. Form, injury, I mean, that's a question that you'd have to ask Greg Berhalter. I don't know where he sees Miles Robinson in that. I think Miles Robinson can absolutely beat out Matt Miazga. I think he can beat out Aaron Long. I think that's a pretty good battle. Maybe, and this season Long wasn't great either, so they're kind of even, and I would have put Robinson ahead of Long after last season. So it's pretty much open for debate at this point. Does Walker Zimmerman get another look here at some point? I think he should. He had a great year. He had a better year than Long and Robinson both. So that second center back spot, I think, is up for grabs between a whole lot of different people. I don't think Miazga did anything yesterday to stake a claim to it. And Robinson will get an opportunity.
Yeah, and that was my larger question about guys like Miazga and Ream is that why do they continue to get these opportunities when you've mentioned other guys? I mean, it just and I understand in the context of me asking the question, it comes down to schedules and availability and all those kinds of things. Is when you can plug these guys into the lineups in these situations. But Miazga and Ream, at least for me, they're not setting the world on fire. Why do they continue to get these chances?
Ream wasn't there, first off, so that was before. Let's not confuse anybody. Why was he there? Because it was a European-based roster.
Right, and that's what I said. In this particular instance, I'm answering my own question as I talk it through, but it adds to my information base as to asking the question as to why Miazga continues to get these chances.
Yeah, but Ream, let's leave Ream out of it. Don't mix that one up. Ream might be done at this level. Maybe not. I don't know. I mean, I don't like to rule anybody out just as they get older. I think there's always a spot where you might need a veteran to come in a situation. I think it's a different conversation than bringing a 19 or 20-year-old through. For example, the 2017 Gold Cup, when you had a bunch of injuries in the back, I would have had zero problem if they had brought Michael Parkhurst in at that point because he was in the midst of an incredible year in Atlanta. A career resurgence, and you needed somebody who could step in potentially at a moment's notice, probably just be on the bench. If he had gotten that call-up, I think he would have deserved it. Would he have been the guy to build around for the upcoming qualifiers? No, probably not. But would he have been somebody to come in short notice if you had injuries in a Gold Cup? Yeah. So, yeah. I mean, Tim Ream could get a call-up based off things that happen. I don't think he's in the mix going forward to start next to Brooks. I think it's down to Miazga, Long, Robinson, Zimmerman. Zimmerman should be in that mix. And we'll see who else gets in there.
Yeah. Other news to catch us up on.
We still got a lot of comments on this, John.
Then go. Keep going.
Chiefs coach.
If we still got USMNT stuff, go, because the other comments from Chris Ashley about other actions. So keep going.
Yes. Chiefs coach Steve. For me, it looked like we belonged and not the ugly cousin you had to take to prom. Credible performance to build off of.
Did he take his ugly cousin to prom?
I don't think he's in any way insinuating that he did.
Okay.
He's saying that the U.S. was the ugly cousin in the past.
Yeah, okay. Just checking. I didn't know if that was from personal experience or not.
Chiefs coach Steve, if you want to go at OSG Nelson, go at it. Have fun. Jason Nix, it was Wales, though, not a top 50 FIFA team. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Ricky says, I think Tyler Adams got Bradley's spot going forward. I totally agree. Totally agree. And yes, I've defended Michael Bradley many, many times, but
yes,
Tyler Adams, watch it with that tone over there. Michael Bradley's been one of the best U.S. men's national team players. Settle down.
Michael Bradley supporter as the next
No,
guy.
you're not.
I'm not
Don't
anti-Bradley.
Even. Don't even.
I'm not like others.
Okay. Anyway, I've been a big supporter of Michael Bradley, but his time has passed on the national team.
Don't pin an anti-Bradleyness on me,
You're
sir.
the one who put the tone towards me saying Bradley. Anyway, let's move on. Bradley's time is done unless you have an injury situation, unless you need a last-minute call-up. He can step in if needed in those moments. It's Tyler Adams. I think it might be Johnny, too. So don't even rule Johnny out of this one at all. I really liked his game. He's a different kind of player than Adams. To have somebody who plays that role a little differently is good. So good competition there, and we'll see more guys coming into that mix. But, yeah, I think it's Adams' spot right now as the 6. J-Dub says, did Werder Bremen not let Sargent go, or do we know why he didn't go? It's because they had a positive test. So they pulled everybody back because of quarantine rules. Were they probably happy about that? Yes, because they didn't have to let people go. They could have turned down the call-up anyway because it was a friendly, but they pulled all of their call-ups back, I think except for one who had either already left or there was some weird situation with one. But anybody they could pull back, they did. They did with Josh Sargent. That's fine. That's just how it is. Chiefs coach Steve and Joe Bost are arguing about the ugly cousin and prom thing being either from Alabama or Kentucky, and I think both would actually be accurate.
I was
here.
going to say both may apply, yes.
Ragamuffin wants to give McDreamy a 2 on the rating scale, which I would agree with.
So is McSteamy a higher rating, or is that just an equal a 2?
I'm not calling anybody McSteamy, first off, so you get a 1 for calling somebody McSteamy.
Separate doctor character, same show. It was part of the rivalry.
Plonker.
McDreamy. Blame ABC. McDreamy and McSteamy. They were two of the doctor nicknames that sent folks into Twitter conversations after their episodes were over.
Bruh.
Like I said, I haven't seen Grey's Anatomy in 13 years.
Burned says, Reyna playing with a false 9 is underwhelming. When Dortmund played Brand up top, it was just as bad. It's just harder. I mean, especially for a younger player. Like, make it easy for Conrad, for Reyna, for McKinney. Give them that focal point. You know, it's just, I think it's too complicated to do at a national team level unless you've had a group consistently for a long period of time. And you can work towards it. You can work towards it in a tournament where you have more training time, you have more video time. I mean, here they had one real good session, I think Berhalter said before the game. Don't throw somebody into a false 9. I mean, Legit did the best he could with it, but he's not a false 9. I don't think he'd ever played a false 9. So don't do it. Just don't. It makes things way more complicated than it needs to be.
Yep.
Let's see here. So 3TH said, if I recall correctly, per FIFA, it has to be a quarantine required by the local government. But the thing here that's different, 3TH, is that this was a friendly. So they could have denied the call-up anyway. Friendlies, you don't have to allow players to go. Only in situations where it is a competitive match. All right. I got a couple bots to block. Good
Are they Russian or Swedish?
I don't know. They've got weird wing-ding things going on in their stuff. I don't know what nationality they are from. But they are blocked now. All right.
Blocked!
Modiflow's back. Welcome.
Hello. Welcome back.
Welcome. All good. Burns says, basically, the USMNT needs somebody like a Lynn Williams. And Joe Ball says Atlanta United could use Lynn Williams. I agree. That would be the kind of player. And that is that player that we talked about earlier. That is the idea of a number 9 who can play, but has speed to get in behind, but has the ability to be a target too. You want them to be as technical as possible, but most importantly, you want them to be able to break down a defense. And if they do it through their speed, and you've got a Conrad, you've got a Gio, you've got other Pulisic who can either support them in that or play them through, then you're going to score a bunch of goals. So, a number 9 in that realm can be just fine. All right. I believe, actually, we've got a lot on the Twitch pitch, which is always good, but I think we've caught up on most of it. Burns says one positive about the team now is most players have good touch. That's definitely an upgrade. Used to be 2 or 3, the rest were grinders. Now it's more towards the good technical ability, and that's a huge advantage. It's something that I've talked about a lot with Atlanta United. Is Atlanta has been able to play better soccer quicker because they've recruited soccer players. You look at the defenders they've brought in. It hasn't been just a size speed guy. It's guys who can play, and that allows you to do more. If you have players who are technically limited, it's going to limit how much you can involve them in certain phases, and you can't have guys who are along for the ride against top competition because they're going to get exposed. The U.S. has been in that situation in the past. They're not necessarily now. Now can you take that next step where you get to the tactical side? And that's maybe the hardest step for the U.S. to take because you've had the athletes. You've had good technical players at young ages. But now it is, okay, can you read a game? Can you read where this pass needs to go? Can you read what run you need to make off the ball? Can you read where you need to go to support this player defensively? It's that reading of the game that is the next step for the U.S., in my opinion. Okay, one thing Pacine says, pretty much the only thing the women's national team lags behind the men's national team is in diversity, and I would completely agree. That needs to be a focal point. Although this was an important thing we did with Soccer in the Streets. We did a roundtable discussion at the Center for Civil and Human Rights back in 2015 when the Gold Cup was here. And we had a panel with, who all did we have on it? We had Brad Friedel on there. We had Darren Eales on there. We had Stuart Sharp, who is the manager for the U.S. Paralympic national team. And we had Brianna Scurry. And that was coming off of the 2015 Women's World Cup, where there was a lot of conversation about diversity. And it was Brianna Scurry who made a really big point about that. I think at times when we talk about diversity, we only talk about race. And she said that she was really happy to see that women's national team in 2015 and how diverse they were based off sexual orientation. That was the first time that you really saw a team with a number of players who were out. And I mean, when you think of the 2015 World Cup, what's one of the lasting images is Abby Wambach, going over, and I believe it was her partner at the time, kissing her partner in the stands after the celebration. That was something you didn't see before. So when you talk diversity, you do have to factor that in. And that is something on the women's national team that they have a lot of diversity in. Racially, yeah, it's not as diverse as it should be. And that's because women's soccer in the United States, down to the youth level, is not as diverse as it should be in terms of race. It needs to be more. There needs to be more outreach. There needs to be more support there. There's not enough. That's a fact. There's just not enough. U.S. soccer has to do more in that regard.
I was going to ask, U.S. soccer has to do more. So this is going to sound like a simplistic question, but how do we do more?
You put resources to it. You flat out put resources to it because that doesn't happen overnight. You don't just go to a inner city area and put in a soccer field and say, okay, now you can play.
Yeah.
You have to have programming. You have to have coaches. You have to have coaches who look like the kids in that neighborhood. You have to have coaches who build relationships in those neighborhoods. Like, this stuff doesn't happen by dropping $10,000 in a location. It happens with people. It happens with time. It happens with relationships. It happens with building community. And there's not enough of it on the women's side. There's not enough of it with a specific outreach to bringing more black girls into the game, more Latina girls into the game, and all of the other races that we have in this country. The women's player pool, look, it's very suburban and it's very white and it's very upper middle class. It is, because that's who has access. That has to change. The men's side, there's more opportunities. The pro game is part of that. Pro game doesn't care how much your mom or your dad makes at their job to be able to pay for the fees. Because if you're good enough, you're going to get into a pro situation now far more than you used to be able to in the United States. On the women's side, there's very little of that. The NWSL's really just starting to get underway with any kind of a homegrown push. So you don't have that to bridge the gap. To get noticed by colleges, you have to be able to play in these showcases, which means you have to pay lots of money to play in these teams, which limits the pool. And that needs to stop. Then that's one angle of it. But the other thing that I think people don't necessarily know much about, because it doesn't get talked about enough, is that grassroots. That grassroots of going into, for example, and I wasn't involved in this program directly, but I was involved in helping fund it, a girls soccer program in Clarkston, Georgia. We've seen boys come through Clarkston and play in college. There's 3 or 4 that are playing in the Sun Belt semifinals today from the Clarkston area. Some of them played for Atlanta United's academies. Lagos Kunga is on the Atlanta United roster from Clarkston, refugee from Angola. The boys' side, there's been some ways for them to make that jump. The girls' side, there hasn't been. And it's not easy. We at Soccer in the Streets started a girls' program in Clarkston, and it was very hard. There's cultural differences for girls playing sports. There's not as much support in general in the community for the girls to play at the same level the boys do. It takes time to change those things. That's why you have to commit to it. U.S. Soccer needs to commit dollars, people, resources, coaching, education to that over a 10-year period. Not a 1-year grant, a 10-year period of making women's soccer in this country more diverse. And 10 probably isn't even enough, but at least it's a start of an idea that this is going to take longer. It ain't happening overnight. It just isn't. It's a lot of work. And there are people doing the work, and you don't know who they are, and you've never heard of them because they do the work in the grassroots. But there are people out there doing the work who need more support, and there also need to be more people out there doing the work and getting supported to do it. It's not easy. But U.S. Soccer on the women's side has to do that more, because there's not as much representation on the women's side. There's just not.
You want me to thank somebody as we head to hour number 2?
Yeah, and then we got Mike Conti joining us here in just a minute. So tell us about Steve Apolinsky over in Decatur.
I could do that. Apolinsky & Associates, LLC, proud supporters of everything Soccer Down Here and the SDH Network for a wrongful death or serious injury conversation. A couple different ways that you can do it with our friends at Apolinsky & Associates. Give them a call, 404-377-9191. Get a free consultation that way. You can shoot Steve Apolinsky an email directly, steve at aa-legal.com. And speaking of aa-legal.com, since that is the homepage for the firm, you can access it, large device or small, and however you do that, when you're on the World Wide Web, hitting the Enter key, the Return key, the arrow key to advance it to that particular homepage, there's someone behind the curtain of a pop-up window, because that's what pop-up windows do. They pop up. We don't know who it is. It could be Mike Conti. We don't know.
No, I know it's not Mike Conti.
Okay. So then we'll get that solidified just a little bit. But whoever's on the other end of that pop-up window, you can answer questions. You can ask them questions. They'll have them answered. That's what questions are for, and that's what pop-up windows are for. So anyway, over 30 years of experience, over $40 million of judgments for clients in Georgia and Alabama. Recognized as legally by Georgia Trend Magazine for being one of the top 100 firms in this here state of Georgia. Apolinsky & Associates, LLC, for wrongful death and serious injury matters. The website is aa-legal. toofast.com.
You get a 3, sir.
Yeah, I read it too fast.
Yeah, you get a 3 out of the rating system.
Me and Miazga were right there.
And you told people that they were going to give answers and things. It got out of hand. It just got out of hand. J-Dub gives you a 6. J-Dub's very generous.
Yeah, that is very generous. That is absolutely very generous.
All right, let's get Mike on the line. I believe Mike has power back because he was having some issues with that.
First question we have to get addressed here.
If we don't get him, we'll know. We'll have an answer. We got him, so Mike must have some kind of power back.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm at the office today.
Oh, so, well, there you go.
Power issues don't affect me here. We have many, many generators, but actually, the power's back on at home too.
Very good.
I was ready to kiss the feet of the Georgia Power technician who came to the door at like 7:00 last night because I was starting to get anxious. Like, am I ever going to get power back? And they were great. They were awesome.
Yeah, so, when it gets past a couple of hours, it's like, what?
Well, the funny thing, so I got a tree removed yesterday. Some people who follow me on Twitter might know that.
That's like tree, sir.
And they said, when we're done, they might come out in half an hour. It might take them an hour or two. No big deal. And it took like 5 hours. And I was starting to get very, very nervous. Like, have they forgotten about me? Did I do something wrong? Should I have?
Hey, watching the Masters.
Right. Well, I just kind of gave up on the Masters yesterday. It was hopeless because, you can watch on your cell phone, but you're going to drain your cell phone battery, and I might need that if there's an emergency. It was a mess. But I've got power. I've got, I think all my food did not spoil, so that's good. So it's all good. It's all good. Glad to be back among the normal today.
Excellent. Good to hear. We've been saving a very specific thing for your appearance today.
Okay.
Our mutual friend Jarrett Smith did his 2020 Atlanta United Awards.
Oh, great. Okay. Excellent.
They are available at soccerdownhere.net. And we'll have a little discussion. He created his own categories. He did all this. It is posted word for word. I don't think there was even any grammatical things or anything that needed to be changed. So these are the words of Jarrett Smith and his opinions.
Jared very infrequently makes grammatical and syntax errors. He's a smart guy.
He's pretty good, yeah. There's not a lot of work to be done when you're editing Jarrett, so it's good stuff. Best Newcomer was his first one, and he gave it to Marcelino Moreno.
Mm-hmm. I'm giving it to Jurgen Damm, and that's not a slight on Moreno at all. I thought Moreno was very, very impactful in what did it end up being, Jason, like 4 or 5 matches he played.
Yeah.
Jurgen Damm in 9 matches ended up leading the team in assists. So just from a statistical standpoint alone, I would have to give that to Jurgen Damm.
Okay. No, I'm right there with it. I like Moreno as the newcomer. I was going to suggest, Brooks Lennon or somebody like that, but I imagine that there are other categories that could apply.
I have other categories in mind for Mr. Lennon.
Okay. Right. The Carlos Carmona Underrated Player of the Year Award. I like that from Jared.
What did Jared have?
Jeff Lorenowitz.
Okay. Yeah, wow. Let me think about this.
Mo Adams?
Mo did not consistently
at the end he would
all year.
Right.
So I can't go there. I would give that to Anton Walks. And I get Jared's rationale with Lorenowitz. I thought Walks ended up being super solid and surprisingly versatile and very, very reliable at center back. In a year where Atlanta United really needed that because you had Miles miss time, you had Escobar miss time, you had to be careful with Lorenowitz, and I don't think you wanted to play him at center back.
No.
You had Meza miss time. Like that ended up being really, really critical, really, really vital. That Anton Walks was not only able to play center back, but be reliable as he was at center back.
What about you, John?
No, I like Walks as an idea. I was going with Mo's ladder play for underrated player of the year, not for the whole package. But no, I can definitely see Anton Walks because he was anticipated coming in to be a depth piece, but ended up being a very important cog, logging a lot of minutes early on in the season.
Yeah, that's 100% right. And John, as always, puts it much more cleanly than I. I think our expectations for Anton were, we might see him, once a month. Might see him occasionally, and he ended up being a lineup stalwart for this team. I just think it's a full season award, and that's why I can't go with Mo Adams. The final month of Mo Adams' season 100% correct, John. Absolutely. Way overperformed expectations, but we did not see that consistently from him up until maybe the start of October.
Right.
I like the walk shout because he ended up 7th in minutes played this season. Mm-hmm. He played in 17 of 23 games. He started 15 of 23 games. Mm-hmm. That's the one that kind of jumps out to me, and he doesn't get really a lot of praise for his performances there, and they were good.
Yeah, I think, and Jason, correct me if I'm wrong, don't you think that's kind of the plight of a center back? That we kind of take them a little bit for granted when they're that solid. Like Michael Parkhurst, who we all loved, but, you never walked away from a match thinking, wow, Michael Parkhurst really had a great match, even though he did. Because often I think we just focus on what's happening in the attack, or maybe something flashy the goalkeeper did, or something flashy that a midfielder did. And I think sometimes we take center backs for granted, especially when they're as rock solid as a guy like Michael Parkhurst was. That to me was walks this year. You don't want to do anything flashy as a center back. If you do, you're probably doing something dangerous. So I really appreciated the job Anton Walks did this year. I thought it was great.
Yeah, I mean, digging into his numbers, like just a couple of things on Walks before we move on. So he played almost as much as he did in 2017, which surprised me because I didn't expect that. And, he played like 14.8 90-minute segments, and he played 17 in 2017. I mean, he wasn't in the team a whole lot in 2017. I think it's easy to forget that. You look at some of the other output. I mean, he passed at 88.7%. So, I mean, he was reliable on the ball. His long passing was good, 76.4%. Good in the tackle. I mean, he did everything you needed him to do playing. Where did we see him this year? We saw him at left wing back. We saw him at left back. We saw him at center back. We saw him at right back in a sub appearance. We didn't see him at holding midfield.
Are you sure?
Yeah, we never saw him
there.
See
a match out?
No, he always went to the back in those situations.
Okay.
But he played all across the back line, and that's a credit to his versatility. So, yeah, underrated player of the year. I really like the walk shout, so I'm with you on that one. Breakthrough performance. John Gallagher, according to Jarrett Smith.
Breakthrough over the course of the season or a single game?
I'd say over the course of the season.
Yeah, hard to argue against Gallagher. Ended up leading the team in scoring. Look, if Atlanta United had made it this year into the postseason, Gallagher would have been one of the major reasons why. And I think Gallagher did a remarkable job. This is something we talked about on Stoppage Time Wednesday. Gallagher did a remarkable job when he finally got the opportunity down in Orlando against Columbus, where he put in a game-influencing, game-changing performance. And that really positioned him to be relied upon quite a bit once we got into the final phase of the schedule. Obviously Glassy wasn't the manager down in Orlando, but I think it was pretty apparent that Gallagher had earned the trust of Stephen Glass pretty quickly. Very, very hard for me to argue against John Gallagher there.
Yep, right there with you, Gallagher.
Yeah, I think it has to be Gallagher in this kind of year.
Yeah, and I'm just trying to think if there might be an honorable mention here somewhere. I would say, and again, on a much different plane and much different level than John Gallagher, and this does get forgotten because it was so long ago, but I thought what Lawrence Weick did second half of Nashville and then that Cincinnati game before everything kind of ground to a halt, it would have been interesting if the pandemic had not happened and play would have continued. Champions League would have continued on its schedule. MLS would have continued on its schedule. I think Weick would have been in a lot in the month of March going into April before you got your injury situation settled at center back. But I thought what Weick did in those, basically 135 minutes or so that he played prior to the Club America match, very, very noticeable, and a little bit unlucky that he wasn't able to build upon that.
if I wanted to go off the board and take breakthrough in a different direction, I could potentially go Mo Adams there for like his kind of step up. I think in terms of what his position will be for next year and his importance for next year. And you could put George Bello there too.
Yeah, I was gonna say Bello. Yeah,
you could put.
I think. Yeah. Wow.
I rate Bello more, so I don't think it was a breakthrough for him. That's what I've expected from Bello.
Me too. But I get it.
Yeah.
I get where you're going with that.
I could see the argument. I'm with Gallagher too, though. I like that situation. Goal of the year.
Oh, boy, okay.
There's not a whole lot to pick from, sadly.
No.
Jarrett went with the team goal from Gallagher in D.C.
Okay, like it. I thought there was a goal that might have even been a little better in that match.
Lennon?
Brooks Lennon.
Yeah, I was going to
Lennon
for me.
Goal of the week.
Yeah.
Which one? I thought it was interesting, by the way. MLS did not nominate an Atlanta United goal for goal of the year this year.
They wanted somebody else to win.
Right. That's exactly right. Because, if you nominate an Atlanta United goal, it's going to win with our supporters. So just off the top of my head, I would probably go with that Brooks Lennon. By the time this segment is over, maybe my memory will have jogged to the point where, well, I'll tell you, Pitty's second goal against Nashville was pretty great.
Hold that thought. There's a separate category. There's a separate category that might fall into for you.
Separate category?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll stick with Brooks Lennon in D.C. for now with whatever you guys have coming up in mind.
This is Jarrett. This isn't us. But Jarrett created the Tito Villalba Memorial What the Smoking Hell goal of the year.
What the smoking hell.
And that is the one with Pitty's blast.
That's it. Yeah, that would be it. That usually it's like we joke about when Jason gives a little ooh. You know it's something special. And I think we've only had really 3 of those. Maybe 4. But that Pitty goal,
what are the 4? Now I got to think about this.
The Lorenowitz goal against America.
Yeah.
The Tito goal in San Jose right before halftime from outside the box. And then the Pitty goal, and I feel like there might have been another.
I mean, the winner in San Jose got something out of me. I don't know what it was.
Yeah, I don't know what the hell that was. But, I feel like there was a 4th one. And I also feel like it might have involved Jeff Lorenowitz. But I'm not 100% sure. Those 3 for sure I remember. And yes, this year's goal was the Pitty goal against Nashville.
Yeah, that's definitely one. If it gets me to react on the mic in that situation, then I think it qualifies as a what the smoking hell goal of the year candidate.
I want to say that was his last touch in an Atlanta United shirt, wasn't it?
It might have been.
No,
he played the next match. He played the Orlando match after that because I remember saying it. He went out almost in his last game for Atlanta with a great performance.
Yeah.
But
there was that. Yeah, that was the Orlando game at home, right?
Yeah,
where Brooks got kicked in the neck. Yeah, you're right.
Yep, he did play that. 4 Card says that the other moment from me might have been Barco against New England.
I don't think that was an moment. It should have been. It was amazing. I mean, we have like the perfect angle for that goal because we were right behind basically where he struck it. Like we had a perfect direct line of sight to that goal in Foxborough. I just remember the guy sitting below us, one of those stereotypical like Peter Griffin, Massachusetts guys. He goes, well, that's what you pay him $15 million for.
That's what you pay him $15 million for.
That happened.
Pretty much.
That definitely
was a sweet one. That was an unbelievable goal. That might have been goal of the year 2019. Right up there with Jeff against Club America.
Yeah. Best win. Jarrett gave it to the Dallas win.
Yeah. Oh boy. Well,
not a lot of choices
not much
here
to
either.
choose from here, unfortunately. I mean, I think Jarrett is. I think I know where he's going with that. That was certainly the best team that Atlanta United got a win against this year.
Yep.
Oh, boy. I mean, let's go through the 6 of them. Honestly, the season opener in Nashville should get more credit than it deserves. Yep. That was a very, very emotional night. You're playing in front of 60,000 people on the road. Now, granted, a large percentage of that 60,000 were your fans, but, it was an emotional night. You lose Joseph in the midst of it. Nashville, you made a little mistake on the Zimmerman goal, but you had full control of that match. Should have been 3-1. Mm-hmm. You should have had the keeper sent off for handling about 45 yards outside his area. So I feel like you could have gotten a third after that, even though it was deep in the stoppage time. That's a good win. Nashville ended up making the playoffs. Yeah. Nashville evolved quite a bit over the course of the year, but that was a good win. Your win against Cincinnati at home in March, unremarkable. Your 2-0 win over Nashville coming off the break, I think, is a good win, too.
It is.
I mean, and I'm very bullish on Nashville this year. You guys know that. But that was a full controlling performance, a lot of optimism for the way things looked under Stephen Glass after that win. I would nominate that. And then you have Dallas, D.C., and the last one against Cincinnati. So, I mean, I think they played the best. They were most dominant, obviously, at D.C., but D.C. was such a hot mess that night. I'll hesitantly go with Jared on that, but I think your 2 wins over Nashville, in particular the 2-0 win you had at home, are really right up there for me.
Yeah, I would have said DC, I like your Nashville idea. Here's how Jarrett wrapped up his thought about Dallas. He said, team had struggled a fair amount. They seemed to find some gumption in that performance, pressing Dallas left and right, earning a penalty that Jeff Larenowitz put away. Dallas made changes that included putting on their DPs, and Atlanta's backline held tough to escape with 3 points when every other night that year it would have been easy to lay down.
I totally agree. If I remember correctly, it was Dallas bringing on their DPs that was actually disruptive to Dallas somehow. Yeah. I mean, again, it's a little bit of a bummer conversation because there's not much to pull from, and you don't really look wistfully at any of these 6 wins. But yeah, I would go with Jared. I'd say close second would be your 2-0 win over Nashville.
I'm gonna go off the board with a win that none of you have mentioned.
I think I know where you're going.
3-0 over Motagua in the second leg of CONCACAF because that was the most.
I didn't know we could count that.
Oh yeah, I'm making the rules. We can count whatever we want.
Win's a win. Doesn't matter.
That's such a depressing thought because that's what Atlanta United could have been this year.
I know. I'm looking back at the lineup right now.
If everyone stays healthy and is kept together and there's no pandemic, you got to remember something. I think a lot of people have forgotten this. Yeah, and look, preseason is preseason, and friendlies are friendlies. Atlanta United did not lose a preseason match, correct?
That's right.
They drew with that Elfsborg, didn't they?
Yeah, that was a draw with Elfsborg.
And then the Leones Negros, I mean, that silly penalty shootout they had because they concocted that bizarre trophy. In my opinion, that's a draw. I know a lot of people will fight me on that.
No,
if you lose in penalties,
those people are wrong. If you have a penalty shootout, it goes down as a draw. Yeah, the penalty shootout determines who advances or who wins or who gets whatever trophy. It's a draw.
Right. So, look, you did not lose in the preseason, okay? You got a good draw down there at altitude and in weird weather.
That was a good result.
Scored immediately after they scored a great Pitti to Joseph goal. You beat Nashville. Then you come back, you play the home leg before you go to Nashville. You looked absolutely dominant. And that's the sad thing. Like, before Joseph's injury, I really thought Atlanta United was going to be a fun, special team to watch this year. And I think it just goes to show you, Joseph's injury was step 1, the pandemic was step 2, and things got pulled off the rails really quickly. But that, to me, is going to be one of the big what-ifs, maybe in the whole history of the club. What if you keep playing, and what if Joseph doesn't get hurt? I bet you Frank DeBoer is still the manager right now. as far as would Pitti have been sold, I don't know, because Pitti's price probably would have been higher. And I'm not saying the club didn't get a really fair price for him in the first place. They absolutely did. But it's a big what if to me. I don't know. I think it could have really been a great season if all the things that happened from February 29th to March 11th did not happen. That's going to go down as one of the costliest 2-week stretches really in the history of this club because of all that happened in that span.
Worst loss. Jarrett went with the loss against Columbus at the MLS's back tournament.
Okay, so, and I'd like to hear Jarrett's rationale. Are we talking about they played the worst, or, well, it's probably all the same. To me, it is the you guys go first. I need to think this through. My initial thought is the DC loss a couple weeks ago, where he gave up the goal to Rivas in stoppage. But I need to think this through. I'd like to hear you guys first.
Yeah, I would have gone to Columbus in MLS's back. Here's what Jarrett said. Jarrett says, the fight in the second half was good, but forgive me if I can't get over how flat that team looked in the first half of the must-win game, and a game that ultimately looks like it sealed Frank DeBoer's fate. Issues with management or not, there was no good excuse for coming out that flat in that situation.
Yeah, I agree.
So, yeah, I'll go with Jarrett here, because that was another part of what you were talking about, Mike, about activities in a season. And I think that this is another one of those moments that is a reference point of this year.
Yeah, I think what stands out to me, John, about the DC loss is, look, I mean, that's a team that you had beaten 4-0 a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
You win that match, you're going to – in fact, I haven't done the math on it yet, but I think if you win that match, you would have gone to the playoffs.
I think so.
Yeah,
I have to do the
math. Yeah, no,
you
would have.
I'm pretty sure of that.
Yeah, you would have.
It's just a failure in the clutch, an abject failure in the clutch. Jarrett's right. I mean, the first 45 minutes against Columbus were not good at all. I would also submit the 4-2 loss up in Nashville. That was really brutal, where you conceded right away. And it was just such a deflation. That Nashville loss was one of those matches where I hate to admit this. I was kind of looking at my watch a couple times, like, when is this going to be over? Felt like they were never in it. So I think there are different standards we can apply to this. The team probably played the worst against Columbus and Orlando. They failed the most in the clutch against DC. That 4-2 loss in Nashville, though, really stands out to me for some reason, just as far as not being very competitive.
See, some of the other categories, you didn't have much to pick from. You got a few to pick from here, sadly.
Right.
And it really depends on the way you want to go. Four Card said the loss in Mexico City was the one that hurt the most.
See, I have a different recollection of that one.
I do, too.
And we've talked about that before. I mean, you got hit on a Golasso. You got hit on a freak counter. And then the third goal, once you gave up the third goal, you actually really had a lot of control of that match. And America was kind of hanging on a little bit in the second half.
Yeah,
if Atlanta United would have scored in that second half, and they hit the post twice, didn't they?
I think so.
If Atlanta United, if one of those post shots goes in, you're going down to Orlando in a couple weeks thinking, you know what, we might have a pretty decent opportunity here to keep playing. So I have a different recollection of that Club America. I think so many other things were happening that day that might have affected the perception of that match for all of us. That one, to me, reminded me more of the 3-0 loss down in Monterrey, where you were hanging in. In fact, I think they even played a little bit better in Mexico City than they played in Monterrey. But in Monterrey, you were hanging in.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, actually.
You were, and then who was it? Pavone, who had the Golasso very late that gave them their third.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know why Frank didn't make substitutions. And I mean, there's a lot we can pick apart from that match. But no, I think that Club America loss was one where the scoreline was not really fair to Atlanta United.
I think it was a better performance than 3-0. You gave up goals that you couldn't give up early. That allowed you to have a little more of the play. But yeah, I didn't feel like it was a 3-0 thrashing in any way.
Right.
I'll move quickly because I think the people on the Twitch pitch are very sad now after we're having sad moments down here for this segment. The MLS's back tournament, the Cincinnati game, was the one that drove me the most crazy, and it's not because of the performance necessarily. It's just the way the game played out. I was
first half red
incredibly
card
angry.
And the way Cincinnati just embarrassed themselves playing, bunkering while playing up a man. Just awful.
Was it Duplan who should have gotten the sent off with the two quick?
Yes. It was Duplan with the studs up on Barco, I believe. The Orlando win at the Benz is one that hasn't been mentioned that was very frustrating coming off of that Nashville 2-0 win. Expected a better performance there. Anytime you lose to Orlando, it drives you nuts. The one that would be my pick for worst loss of the year is the game in Orlando, the 4-1 loss down there. Not because you played badly. I think actually you played fairly well, but because that was the loss that I thought really puts you behind the 8 ball going in. The DC game, you had a chance to go to Orlando and make it good. Yeah. And you played well, but you didn't get the result. Like, those are the losses that hurt me more. When you get outplayed thoroughly and you lose, I throw that away quicker. When you don't play badly and you lose 4-1, those are the ones that stick with you a little bit more, for me anyway. And that was the one that ticked me off. The Toronto game also ticked me off. So those would be my two that I'd throw into the mix. Let's end on a good, happy topic. MVP of the team this season.
MVP of the team this season.
Jarrett gave it to Brooks Lennon.
I agree with Jarrett. I think George Bello would get honorable mention. But I thought Brooks Lennon did a phenomenal job this year. And look no further than the fact that he played in every league match. He was the only player on this team to do that. Shows you his value, shows you his consistency, shows you his level of play. Got kicked a lot this year, never really complained about anything. Great representative for this team on and off the pitch. And I'll say it, I think he proved a lot of people wrong when they felt like Atlanta United downgraded at that position by allowing Julian Gressel to leave and by acquiring Brooks Lennon to replace him. That's when the front office got 1,000,000% right, and anyone who watched those two play this year objectively would have to say the same thing. So Lennon was phenomenal. I think if he was playing with Joseph, he probably would have had double-digit assists this year. Now you really, really look forward to 21 with Lennon and Dom on the right side connecting with Joseph. I think that's going to be maybe the best right flank in this league in 2021. He was great. Bello was phenomenal as well. Bello got a lot better. Bello had some shaky moments early, got a lot better. Where I thought Lennon was a little more consistent all year. So absolutely agree with Jared on Brooks Lennon.
Yeah, I think some people will mark Lennon down for a couple of bad games, just like they'll mark Bello down for a couple of bad games. I put fatigue on a lot of that. Lennon had a bad night in Nashville where he was at fault on 3 goals. He had a bad day in Orlando in that 4-1 loss down there. But when you look at in the totality of the season for him, he had 3 assists. He created 6 big chances per Opta. Created a chance every game he played. I mean, he was the most accurate crosser you had in the league. Good defensively, played all over the right side, whether it was wing back, whether it was right back, whether it was right wing. Lennon was very, very, very good this season. And in a bad year where you're trying to pick an MVP, it's not easy. I mean, other guys I'd put forward in that. Franco Escobar, I think, would be part of the conversation. Lennon and Bello are the 3 that I would kind of have in that list for overall performance for the whole year. You know, like Moreno came in late, did well. Jürgen Damm came in second half, did well. Pitti was very good in the first half, and that shouldn't be forgotten. But over the whole season, I'll bring it to Lennon, Bello, and Escobar, and Lennon will just shade Franco in that for me.
Are there any other senior superlatives that we've missed?
Well, wait, John.
What?
We didn't hear your MVP.
Yeah.
No, I agreed with Lennon. No,
okay.
I stipulated early that Lennon was my MVP.
Okay. I missed that.
No, it's all right. It's all good. So, what other senior superlatives have we missed?
That's all Jarrett did.
I'm putting it out there also into the SDH verse. Are there any other senior superlatives?
We could talk about young player of the year. Bello obviously would be right at the top of that. Jarrett did underrated player, which I think is good. Do we want to get into negative awards, or should we just end the segment there?
Oh, boy.
Look, I mean, I think, as Carlos Bocanegra said, there were some players this year that did not perform to the level that we're used to. I don't think it does any good for me to call that out or to have, wooden spoon awards for any of that. I think, look, it was a bad season. It was a very bad season by Atlanta United's lofty standards. But I am optimistic for 2021 based on a lot of what we've just discussed. And I think, again, it's pretty clear to me now who's going to be here next year and who are the pieces that you're going to build around. And that core, I'm encouraged by it. I think so much of it will hinge on, does Joseph come back at 100% of his old self? Is it going to be 90% of his old self? Is it going to be less than 90% of his old self? That's going to be part of it. But, do you bind down Moreno to a high TAM level player and bring in a designated player? Do you sell Barco and bring in a second designated player? What's Eric Lopez going to look like? Who's your manager going to be? A lot of really intriguing things that I think are going to very quickly get the supporters excited about 2021. I feel like the pain of 2020 is already starting to fade a little bit. And look, I mean, if you're going to pick a year to be bad, 2020 is a pretty good year to pick.
Okay.
What do you think about Zombie CONCACAF coming up in like a month?
I'm excited for it. I know a lot of people aren't. I am. I think it's going to be really helpful. If you're not going to start the next MLS season until April or beyond, getting a little bit of a mini camp, God willing, you're going to be together for about 3 weeks. Everyone gets together at the end of November, 2 weeks, go to Orlando. Maybe you do something really shocking down there and you can keep playing a little while longer. But you're going to be together for 3 weeks. Make the most of it because you're probably not going to be together again for a couple months after that. But I think it's encouraging. It's going to any little bit of time that's going to help this kind of mashed together group because of all the midseason things you had to do. Any little bit of time that you can build chemistry is going to be helpful.
I will end with this final category. Who will make the biggest jump in 2021?
Good one. Good question. Mateus Rossetto.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mateus Rossetto. More playing time, more consistency, staying away from injuries. Remember, I mean, he got hurt down in Mexico City. So I don't know how much he was really able to do during the stoppage because he got hurt pretty bad in Mexico City. I saw a lot of very positive flashes from Mateus Rossetto. Somewhat underappreciated, but I think he could make a real jump from 2020 to 2021.
John, what do you think?
Franco Escobar at center back.
I'm not positive he's going to be on this team next year, but if he is, I'm with you, John.
I hope he is. I want him to be, and yeah, I think if he's a center back, he will take another jump. I'm going to go in just a little bit different direction. I'm going to go George Bello because I think he takes an even bigger jump next year with what he learned this year, the amount of time he got. I think he'll be part of the U20 squad that goes to a World Cup for the U.S. I think there's a possibility, depending on how everything goes down, that he could be part of the Olympic squad.
Yeah.
That'd be a big jump for him in age, but I think it's possible. I think George Bello, by the end of 2021, is talked about as a national team player. I think he makes that kind of a jump. So, I mean, even though he's coming from a higher position, I think he makes an even bigger jump because of his age and what he learned this year.
No, that's a good shout. I mean, we saw last year with Barco, playing in those U23, those U20 competitions, international competitions, can really help quickly accelerate your development. So totally expecting that for Bello in 2021. That's a good shout.
All right, what you grilling, Mike, this weekend?
Yes, what's on the grill?
I think I'm going to do duck breast tonight. I've done that before with varied results. I just got to get the right wood to smoke. But I feel like we're getting really some great weather, bonus grilling opportunities. So trying to do a duck breast tonight. We'll see how it turns out. Jason, you're busy today, by the way.
I am busy.
Sunbelt.
I will be on the Sunbelt semifinals, flying solo for Central Arkansas and Georgia State in the nightcap, and Georgia Southern and Coastal Carolina in the 4 o'clock game. And we're going to be over at Center Park Stadium, the former Turner Field, for these games.
Well, this will be easy for me. So, I mean, I'm working today, obviously, but I'll watch the Masters, then I'll watch your first game, and then I'll watch John.
There you go. All the things.
My TV plans are set for tonight.
Very nice.
There you go.
Very, very nice. A lot of former Atlanta United Academy guys on Georgia State and Georgia Southern in these games.
Oh, cool.
So,
good.
Yeah, looking forward to seeing it. Have a good weekend. Good luck with the duck.
Yes.
Yeah, quack, quack. We'll see how it goes. But talk to you guys next week.
Thanks, Mike.
See ya.
All right. Make sure you're following him, Mike Conti 929 on social media, on Twitter. Yes, Jason Nix, I'm doing that call solo on ESPN Plus for those games. It's going to be fun. Just storylines if you guys are going to tune in real quick. The amount of games these teams played widely varies because of just what a college season looks like this year. Coastal Carolina only played these 6 Sun Belt games. They didn't play any non-conference games. Georgia State played 11 games, for example. So it was all over the map. Central Arkansas played 2 out-of-conference games. A lot of international players on all of these teams. Coastal ended up winning the conference in the regular season. They're trying to defend their tournament title. Georgia Southern had a bad record this year, but they had a lot of close games, and they played Coastal last weekend, so it's always tough when you have to play a team again, and you have to beat a team 3 times in a season. So I don't think it's a guarantee that Coastal gets an easy win over Georgia Southern, and then the second game should be a really good one. They split this season, Georgia State and Central Arkansas. Central Arkansas, I would love to dig deeper into their recruiting because they're pulling in players from Italy, from Spain, from Denmark, from Japan, Norway. I mean, it is a very diverse roster at a school that you wouldn't really think of that being the case. They also have a goalkeeper who has started to win the job, and I'll have to see if he gets to start tonight, from FC Dallas's academy. He's a freshman. He started to get more playing time as the year went on. And they have a midfielder from Sporting Kansas City's academy who has been a rock for them and started every match. So you're seeing more influence of MLS academies on these college programs and at the Sun Belt level. And you're seeing players come in with experience from, big club academies. You've got players who played in Milan's academy. You've got players who played in Everton's academy. You've got players who played in Leicester City's academy. You've got a lot of experienced players. It's a pretty wide range. So I'm looking forward to these 2 games, 4 and 7 First game is Coastal Carolina and Georgia Southern. Second game is Georgia State, who's the 2 seed, and Central Arkansas, who's the 3.
I'm just looking forward to seeing Sam Allardyce out there at the park.
Well, he might not play. He's coming off of a concussion protocol. Sam Allardyce's grandson, the Sam Allardyce from England, his grandson plays for Georgia Southern as a freshman and played a good bit early this season, had a concussion, just came back to the team, played a little bit in the season finale. So Big Sam's grandson plays for Georgia Southern, which is kind of another wild little element here.
Yeah. Computer science major at Georgia Southern, Sam Allardyce. So we have Big Sam and grandson of Big Sam. I thought that was really cool when you brought that up.
Yeah, that was unexpected. So looking forward to it. The championship games on Sunday. There are tickets available. You can get them at the gate. No cash. I think it's $10 for today and $15 if you want the Sunday package as well to get everything at once. But yeah, it's at Center Park. The former Turner Field. So come down and hang out if you can. Otherwise, watch on ESPN Plus.
Yeah, watch on the Plus. And yeah, I think that looking at the UCA Bears roster, when you go down Central Arkansas, you see Sweden, Norway, Italy, Spain, 3 Spains, Denmark, Japan, Norway, Denmark, Plano East, Moscow, Japan, Miami, Leicester, Tokyo, Verona, New York, Spring, Scottsdale, Lawrence, Kansas, Malaga. Oh, it's all over the place. I want to know how Conway, Arkansas turned into the United Nations of soccer.
Have you gotten into the Mountain Dew by now?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
That makes sense. That you got pretty excited. I was just checking.
But it's cool, though. You sit there and you see all these different places. How did Conway, Arkansas turn into the UN?
Yeah, see how the communication works for some of these teams, as J-Dub says, since that's an issue. I mean, Central Arkansas is new into the Sun Belt. This is their 3rd year in the Sun Belt, and they were the preseason pick. So finishing 3rd was a little bit of a surprise for them. I mean, the hardest thing to know is, and it's the hardest thing for me to prepare for, is, these guys have been doing their COVID testing. Every team's had issues here and there. You get some players who have to sit out due to contact tracing. With roommates or friends who test positive. It had nothing to do with the program. It's been a real challenge. That was something all the coaches said as we talked to them this week. But their players have generally worked really hard to stay safe, to be responsible, to look out for their teammates. And they had one more round of COVID tests coming into this before the teams traveled to Atlanta, before Georgia State had their final training session. So they were waiting on the results of those. We'll have to see if there's any absences, any other injuries that factor in, and what these teams could look like. So in a year like 2020, you look at like that first game where it is Coastal, who was 5-1 in the conference, and Georgia Southern, who was 0-6. I think it could end up being a whole lot closer than those records would tell you because of all the chaos.
A couple of things on Twitter that we haven't gotten to talk about yet. If anyone hasn't seen it, and this is Ricky Ricardo's public service of the day, required viewing, the Mark Donaldson call of the last minute of the match where Scotland clinches their spot in the Euro 2020 in the penalties.
Of the penalties, yeah, not of the match.
So in the penalties, so Mark Donaldson's last minute was posted, and it was a great call by Mark Donaldson.
Well, yeah,
for those who haven't had the chance to listen.
It's a big moment because Scotland hasn't been to a major tournament since 1998. So, when they gave up a goal late in the match, it looked like they weren't going to go to a major tournament again. But they found a way to get through extra time. They won on penalties. It was massive, massive, massive. So Scotland will be playing England in the Euros, which will be a blast.
Yeah.
Let's get caught up on some of the other results from yesterday. We'll get caught up on some other news. If you have final questions, comments, throw them in on Twitter at Soccer Down Here on the Twitch pitch, and we'll get to those as we wrap. So Norway, Sweden, and Ireland have all had a positive test result in the last 24 hours. Norway stopped training sessions ahead of their Nations League match on Sunday. Sweden and Ireland have isolated their positive player. Remainder of the squads have tested negative. Alan Brown was the player for Ireland. Ireland played England yesterday in a friendly that England won 3-0. I don't believe Brown played, so there's not any concern there. Croatia defender Domagoj Vida was pulled out of a friendly against Turkey at halftime on Wednesday because he tested positive, and they got the results at halftime. So they pulled him out. He was isolated from the rest of the squad. He had tested negative 3 days before the match in Turkey, found to be positive on Wednesday. Again, they got it at halftime. So Croatia will probably have to test another round and maybe another round before they play Sweden on Saturday, but Sweden's got issues with it as well. So who knows what happens with that Nations League game tomorrow. We talked about Scotland getting through for the first time. First European Championship since 96. First major tournament since 98 where they were at the World Cup. North Macedonia got through as well. Goran Pandev, 37 years old. He's put off retirement to have this opportunity, and he gets the goal. So it's really incredible for him. He said, more than 19 years with this jersey, the most beautiful in the world, defeats, victories, joys, humiliations. He puts them through. So they go to the European Championships, which is pretty awesome. Slovakia beat Northern Ireland 2-1. And what was the other Euro playoff match?
Efforting really quickly.
Yeah,
so Hungary, Iceland.
Yes, Hungary came back to win. That's it. That's the last one. There were 4. Iceland had a goal, and Hungary scored 2 late. That's what you get for playing boring soccer, Iceland. I was celebrating that. Vamos, vamos, Hungary. South America. So Bolivia, back and forth. They end up losing 3-2 at home thanks to a late penalty. Ecuador gets the win. Argentina 1-1 with Paraguay at La Bombonera. Miguel Almiron drew a penalty early. Paraguay converted on that. Argentina equalized 4 minutes before halftime through Nicolas Gonzalez. Argentina thought they had the go-ahead goal from Lionel Messi in the second half. It was chalked off due to VAR, so they are yelling about VAR on TIC all day long. Lionel Scaloni not happy about it. Ezequiel Palacios fractured a bone in his lower back with a pretty horrendous challenge from Paraguay. It was a knee to the back, broke a bone in his back. Not sure how long he'll be out. He is at Bayer Leverkusen now. I thought he was their best player against Bolivia in the last round of qualifiers, so big loss for Argentina. Now, Giovanni Lo Celso came on in this match, and he played really, really well, so they got a replacement for Palacios, but things got worse for Bolivia at halftime. Yes, it was or sometime in the first half. Their temporary president, the interim president of the country soccer federation, was arrested at the stadium at Bolivia's World Cup qualifier with Ecuador. Broadcast showed he was being escorted away by police during halftime. Just craziness. Rolando Aramayo, who is a member of the executive committee of Bolivia's Football Federation, confirmed it to local radio. He said, "This is an excess, but I won't make more comments." The Bolivian Federation is in total crisis because the head of the federation died due to COVID a little while ago. This is the interim president. He gets arrested. They tried to arrest him before the game, but he'd already left for the stadium. The club executives have been fighting with the federation over power. They haven't restarted their league yet because of all that. It's been suspended since March. And the national team is a joke, and they've lost 3 games. It's bad. It's very, very bad. Very, very bad for Bolivia. Neymar will not be playing for Brazil, and this is a really bad look for Brazil because they brought him to Brazil. Thomas Tuchel said it's going to be impossible for him to play. Tite insisted that he travel. Now they've ruled him out. Brazil's already missing Coutinho, Fabinho, Rodrigo Caio. Those guys are all injured. Militao and Menino, defenders, are out due to COVID. And, yeah, so Brazil plays today against Venezuela. They play Uruguay on Tuesday, and that's what they were hoping Neymar would be able to play in. He will not be. The Celta Vigo hiring of Eduardo Caldet is finalized. That's done. He was at Internacional before, managing Johnny from the U.S. men's national team. Now he is at Celta Vigo. He played for them in 2002. We'll see how he does. He did really well at Racing, has done well at Inter. They're leading the Brasileiro. He goes in to replace Oscar Garcia, who was fired on Monday. Valencia has said, after selling a whole bunch of players, yeah, we're selling more because we don't have any money. Their reports of their financial accounts came out on Thursday. Loss of €26 million last season. The accompanying report clarified that the club plans to plug the hole with money from player sales before June 30 of 21. They sold 7 players in the offseason. They sold another one to Atleti in the weird situation where Atleti could replace somebody, blah, 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 blah. So they're going to sell more to try to bridge that gap of a €26 million loss. That's not a good look. Manchester United reported some figures. I don't think they were supposed to come out until today, but somebody hit send on it. It was supposed to be a test. They posted them. Good job, whoever did this, Manchester United. Loss of 24 cents per share. Fiscal first quarter loss of $39.8 million compared with a profit from the same period a year earlier. Shares have decreased 23% since the beginning of the year. Shares hit $15.30 on Thursday in the final minutes of trading, a drop of 7% in the last 12 months. On the EFL side, now this is a big development that I think got lost in the shuffle with everything yesterday. The League One and League Two teams will be getting the rescue package from the Premier League that they had previously turned down. It's £50 million, $65 million. That's only going to cover League One and League Two teams. They had turned it down before because they wanted solidarity to include the championship. But the Premier League is discussing what they're going to do with the championship teams. Everybody is copacetic with that. So the championship teams didn't want to hold the League One and League Two teams back for money they need now. So they're getting it. £50 million support package. Championship clubs made it clear they wanted to ensure their colleagues in League One and League Two received it. So that's done. Championship clubs also acknowledged that discussions in respect of the levels of support they will receive remain ongoing. Premier League wants to help only those who are suffering significant COVID-related hardship. So they don't want to fix people's bad decisions. They want to help just with COVID situations for the championship teams, which has been the sticking point from the Premier League's planning here. So the League One and League Two teams get the money they need to keep moving. That was probably coming down to the wire and really starting to become a necessity. On the domestic front, they need to, I think, tell us exactly how they want us to pronounce this, because when I see it in Kentucky, I would think the name of the team is Racing Louisville.
Right.
I did see somebody say that they're trying to go with Racing, which would be a Spanish pronunciation of this. Is that going to fly in Louisville, Kentucky? I don't know. Maybe it will. We'll see. We'll see how they do it. Louisville in the NWSL had their expansion draft last night, whatever you want to call them. The headline was drafting Tobin Heath, drafting Kristen Press, drafting their rights anyway. Both are currently under contract with Manchester United. Christy Holly, the coach of Louisville, said, "We feel very good about tonight. There's a lot of decision-making that went into it, a lot of homework and research, and conversations with coaches within the league, with past players, with national team members. So we thought we had a real good insight into what each person brought. The hope is that the balance that we struck positionally, but also through experience and hunger, is something that will hopefully pay off for us on the field next year." So they used their final 2 picks for Heath and Press, which, hey, it's your final 2 picks in there. Okay, cool. They already had traded for Yuki Nagasoto, for Savannah McCaskill from Chicago. So Chicago had full roster protection. They brought in Shayna Matthews as well from Sky Blue. So they started with 2 defenders, which I think was a smart pick. Addison Merrick, which was a really good pick. She impressed me in the Challenge Cup from North Carolina as a rookie. Julia Ashley was selected from OL Reign. Didn't play at all this season because of injury. Jennifer Cujo from Sky Blue was another one who had turned heads previously in the Challenge Cup. Alana Kennedy from Orlando, good pickup there. Caitlin Ford, who's currently with Arsenal, picked her up from Orlando. Michelle Bedos, goalkeeper from OL Reign, formerly University of Georgia. That's a good pick. She's always been behind somebody, in my opinion, so she gets a chance to compete with Katie Lund, who was drafted from Washington. I think Bedos might win that job. So if they get Heath and Press, great, and I think they'll get both of them or neither one of them. They won't get one or the other. If they get both of them, then this is a team that can compete big time next year. I think it's a good core, though. I think Louisville did a really good job with the expansion draft, and we'll see what they add to it.
Yep. Paul Riley went on social media yesterday through the Courage and talked about Addison and said that Addison being the number one pick illustrates how incredibly well thought of she is, amazing tools and the flexibility to play many positions. She'll be a stalwart for Louisville, and her infectious desire, ambitious belief in herself, and tremendous engine make picking her a no-brainer. Massive loss in Courage country, but we wish her all the best. Thank her for her perseverance and work ethic. She's a special player who'll go far in the NWSL. All
right, final tweets of the week. What do we got?
Final tweets of the week, and goes to Mr. Green, the Falcoholic, who mentioned that the PT Golazo versus Nashville in August came to mind for his goal of the year.
Yeah, and it fell into a different category in what Jarrett created. So as long as it's one of those, I'm good.
And then to catch us up on Twitter, Chris Ashley, in all caps, mind you, says, my guy Johnny Alioski from Leeds United and North Macedonia are through to the Euros. Never count on a team named Georgia when something's on the line. And he has a gif of Uga running away from Bevo at the Superdome.
How's Tennessee doing? How's Tennessee doing? That's all I got to say. What else on Twitter?
No, we're caught up. Those two.
Okay. There is conflicting reporting at the moment on Mo Salah. There was a tweet from the Egyptian FA that Mo Salah had tested positive for coronavirus. That was deleted, and now they're announcing the retest of 3 players due to coronavirus. So, connecting dots, he perhaps tested positive, but it has not been confirmed with a second positive test yet. So that is out there. Keep that in mind on everything. That's the biggest news that has happened here lately. USL will announce a 3-year sponsorship and apparel deal with Puma today. That's a big move for USL. That's a good one. That upgrades. I'd assume they'd have a Puma league ball and all those kinds of things. So very interesting there. Trades in the NWSL, the trade window is open, so that's going to be a big thing today. Keep an eye on that because all the different folks who are well-connected have said that they're expecting some fireworks. So Stay tuned on NWSL trades today. We'll recap them tomorrow on the Power Hour. Getting caught up on the Twitch pitch, and there's a good bit here, so it might be somewhat rapid fire. Chiefs coach Steve, his AC is dead. That is not good.
Uh-oh. Well, but, I mean, with the weather turning cooler, I hope that won't affect him as much.
Hopefully, yes.
Yes.
Hopefully. Fingers crossed.
Yes.
Bernd says, do you think eventually ex-Academy players from MLS will replace all the Euros coming into U.S. colleges? Sounds like in Georgia it already did. It hasn't fully in Georgia. You still have that, but you're getting a mix now. I think it can. I think it absolutely can because you're getting a higher level of player than you used to because they're coming from a professional academy as opposed to a great youth club, but they're developing players differently. The players who I think come from professional academies have a different feel on the field in these college games, so we'll see if the MLS Academy players start to take some of those spots. But it is becoming a growing business to bring some of these players over who don't quite make it in Europe to the United States, to these college programs. So I'd assume that comes at a cost, and maybe if there is cheaper domestic talent, that might change. I've seen from Colin Oglethorpe's games at the D3 level more quality players, I think, maybe pushed down to that level who are at other clubs who are being replaced either by internationals or by MLS Academy guys who are falling into the D2 and the D3 levels, which there's talent coming out of those levels too, and they're going pro. It's not just, maybe they're not getting into MLS straight away, but they're getting into NISA. They're getting into USL League One. They're getting into USL Championship. So there's just more talent to work with, which is very cool to see, and we'll see how it shakes out as to which talent is valued at a higher level. What is the Hungary group of death at the European Championships? Well, you can bang on your keyboard and find that. Jason Nix said, did you see the Hungary group of death?
Hungary group
I don't think
Euro
you should.
2020.
J-Dub said it was cool to see Miggy get to play against Messi. Newcastle had some cool posts about it on social media. John sees the group. What is the group?
Portugal, France, Germany.
Yeah. That was already brutal, and now Hungary gets in there as the sacrificial lamb, it seems like. No good. No good at all. Thanks, Sharif, for subscribing to the Twitch pitch. You rock. Skimming through some talk about Mo Salah and the reporting there. It has been pulled back by the Egyptian FA, so we'll have to see there. Modaflow is bigging up his boy Moises Caicedo. I'm telling you, if Atlanta United can get Moises Caicedo, I am all on board with that. I know he wants to go to Europe, but, if a check clears, maybe you can make that work. J-Dub subscribed on the Twitch pitch. You rock as well. Bernd is very proud of his boy from Stuttgart scoring for Argentina. Very happy about that. It was the equalizer after conceding the penalty. But Nicolas Gonzalez got that equalizer. Lo Celso with the corner. Lo Celso had to come on for Palacios, and Lo Celso did really, really well in this game. Lots of laughing about the Bolivian interim president being arrested at the stadium. He was arrested at the stadium, and he was given the perp walk out. It was on the broadcast at halftime. J-Dub with a... Go ahead.
Stephen Goff reporting 2 other coaches contacted by DC United in their preliminary search list, Eddie Howe and David Wagner, both, however, planning to pursue new opportunities in Europe.
Yeah, I didn't expect either one of them to come to MLS. Just doesn't make sense for either one at this point. J-Dub with a question for you. If you can only have 1 cup of full sugar Mountain Dew a day, how many days does it take you to finish a room temperature 2 liter of Mountain Dew?
Let's see. So if 2 liters are 67.3.
Okay.
I think it's 3, because if that's the size that it is, and that's a little over a 20 ounce. So if you figure a little more than 20, like a 24 ounce, and the 2 liter is 67.6, math would say 3.
Okay.
Like I said, that's just basic math, and that's my best guess.
Okay. KFC says, what's the likelihood that Louisville gets Press and Heath? I have no idea.
I was going to ask you, do you think that they're assets, or do you think that they're going to hang on to them on the chance that they would come back and play domestically?
I mean, what assets are they? Why would they be assets?
I don't, just if you want to turn them to another team who would be interested.
If you don't think they're going to come back, how can they be an asset to somebody else? Like, Louisville doesn't know more. There's no asset to it.
Okay.
You can't flip it. They got it flipped to them. Like, what are they gonna flip it for? And yes, they would come as a pair. I don't think it would come as one or the other. So I'm assuming they have a feeling that either after the current FA Women's Super League season, or maybe after the next season, that they could bring them back. I guess their rights just remain in perpetuity, so they've got the rights to those players. I think they'll come back and play in NWSL at some point. Yeah. I don't know how quickly, but I do think they will. Yeah. So, I mean, Nick said, do those rights have value if they never come back? I think they'll come back. So I think that it's worth the last 2 picks in there. I think it's worth a shot. Yeah. You see if it happens or not. Byrne doesn't understand NWSL rules, doesn't understand MLS rules either. I understand MLS rules decently. I do not understand NWSL rules because of all the national team protections and allocations, and I don't get it either. I'm very confused. It is World Kindness Day, Abby tells us. And Pacine is being very kind and wishing a good weekend to everybody. I will echo that. Y'all all rock. Abby says there's an Athletic article that says we keep Barco until the summer. Any things about Barco is a total speculation at this point.
Yeah.
He could go in the summer. He could go in January. He could go next year. Nobody knows, because nobody knows what the market's going to look like in Europe. So keep that in mind. Nobody's got an inside track here on this, because nobody knows what clubs in Europe are going to do in January. It's all guessing game. Yeah. I don't know how you want me to pronounce this, but we have a visitor from France. Ilyas NBA. Ilyas NBA. I'm going to go with that. I think you're a basketball fan. I'm guessing here, Ilyas. But thanks for watching from France on the Twitch pitch. We appreciate it. We do talk about the Liga a little bit, and we talk about the French national team. So not so much today, but we will. We promise. Thanks for hanging out with us. We're on every weekday from 9 to 11 Atlanta time. We'll be on tomorrow starting at 10 o'clock for an hour-long show. We'll kind of get caught up on everything and lead you into the Nations League qualifiers and such. And then we'll be back on Monday. So I agree, Abby. Everything is up in the air, especially when it comes to soccer business. Everything is up in the air, and we'll just have to wait and see. So stay tuned on all of it. We'll be back tomorrow morning to wrap up what has happened today and to preview the Nations League games. You got a bunch of games today all over TV, so plenty to watch. I'll be on ESPN Plus for the Sun Belt semifinals starting at 4 o'clock. John will be on Georgia Public Broadcasting for what game tonight?
Westlake and Lovejoy to decide a region championship. Recruiting 2020 is on at 7. Games a little after 7:30. GPB, gpb.org, the GPB Sports app.
Good to see some love for Clayton County School and Lovejoy. Like that. Cool. Well, we are out for the day. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for all the questions. Thanks for all the interaction this week. We'll be back in the morning for the Power Hour. Mucho platio.
Mucho platio.